Just trying to find the wrong translation.
So I guess this is everyone. So I'll go ahead and start. This is when, like I said earlier, when I got involved with CSI, it was Robin Podmore who came up to me and said, "Oh, you know, we're trying to do lots of these different things. We're working on a solar solution. Let's look at some other solutions like wind and in particular wind is why he talked to me. And the idea at that time was to see if we could do sort of an open source wind turbine generator that could be built in country cheaply. So that's something that I've been working on with a group mostly out of Seattle, but not exclusively out of Seattle. As CSI started to grow, the solar trailer project was by far the flagship project. But there were these other things that were moving along in development. And as a side note, one of the things that I hope we can discuss while we're here this week is, you know, where do these other projects fit in? And do they fit in? You know, should we just focus on the solar trailer? Should we abandon these things? Whatnot. So here are some perspectives on those other products and why they were evolved and where they came from. So one of the things about rural electrification is this potential chicken and egg problem, right? So people don't have electricity, they won't have TVs, other types of loads, and you can't just give them electricity if they don't have those loads. It's useless. Now, one of the wonderful things that I think made the solar trailer project so successful was it was an integrated solution. Okay? You weren't selling, it was actually a bundling of electricity with a service. So people don't want to just buy electricity for electricity's sake. They want to have a service. You're selling them light, you're selling them a way to charge their cell phones, etc. So it's not just that. In fact, this is probably how the marketing, the story should go. You know, these are the services. Oh, and by the way, you need to charge these things once a day and that sort of thing. This is exactly what utilities did in North America when they started to electrify North America. Okay, they were as much in the business of selling irons and washing machines as they were selling electricity. They needed to develop that load. So really, I think the solar trailer model has been sort of a bundled approach. Electricity, services, provided to the consumer. Okay? If you haven't seen the home battery kits, well, I have a slide. Ray already talked about them, but that's what I mean by the service that's being provided. So the solar trailer isn't just the trailer, it's also these end-use devices that I think are important, and we need to acknowledge the development of those. So yeah, here's just a picture of home battery kit, a lighting kit. I won't talk about the technical details too much. So aside from this, I guess, higher end approach, we've looked at other types of lighting, and in particular, like the light stick, which Peter and Ron and Michael had some other development in. Peter, you have one of those, right?
I have a version of one, yeah.
So this was designed to be, okay, let's see if we can come up with a very, very inexpensive way of providing light to somebody. And I'll talk a little bit about the incremental approach. So all this is, it's a couple of rechargeable AA batteries, or finger batteries, as I might call them in different parts of the world, some very low power LEDs, and just a simple switch. And it can be quite bright, but there's other ways of adjusting the illumination. Okay? It's something that it's, I guess, been tested out in a couple of different places, but this is something that CSI members worked on. Okay? So one of the questions is, do products like this, how do they fit into things, and should they fit into things? You know, is this something that we do, or are we only on the generation side, or I think really the answer is in around both. So here's just a couple of pictures of it. Another way of thinking about things is an incremental growth model, or sort of almost like the bootstrap model that Ray talked about earlier. So instead of finding a consumer and saying, okay, here's this big home battery kit, what if we just started out with their original load? Maybe it's just a cell phone. In a lot of cases, they might have a cell phone, or they might have some small lights. And instead of having a 1.5 kilowatt solar trailer, maybe we started with a very small generation system. Maybe it's a bike or something. And as more load developed, they moved on to different products to provide higher amounts of power and energy to them. Okay, so this is sort of like an incremental growth model. And then along the way, they might be actually doing for-profit charging themselves as they have electricity developed in this area. Maybe the neighbors say, oh, well, I can buy a TV because now to charge my battery, I don't have to go all the way to town. George down the street can do it. So does this fit in with what CSI does? Are we okay with this? Or are we on the other side, or are we taking all sorts of all comers, all solutions? I'm not advocating one way or another. I'm just putting that out there as perhaps an item for discussion later on. And there are people within CSI that have and are looking at these other energy solutions that might have a lower threshold to get into, maybe just a couple $100, and you could have this station set up. You could perhaps expand it as it goes along. In that context, two of the other projects that have been working on, that CSI members have worked on, are the light cycle, which is just a small device that you can set a bicycle in, and you pedal power it. Obviously, this is not the most relaxing thing to do, but you can actually get quite a few hours of light for every hour that you spend pedaling. It's not too bad if that's the only thing that you have. It would take a tremendous amount of time to charge a 100 amp hour deep cycle battery. So this is not something that you'd want to do to try to power a whole village, but if the loads were small and you're looking for that incremental approach, maybe this is something that can be done. This hasn't been really field tested, it's just one of the ideas that's out there. Similarly, here is a wind turbine. You can make it by hand for the most part. Its price is, I think that one was a 700 watt wind turbine, and it cost maybe $1,500, somewhere in that range. So one might graduate from the bicycle to the wind turbine or to solar power, that sort of thing. So I guess the point of this talk was just to expose you to these other directions that we could go, and to hopefully get some discussion on, where does this fit in? Should we continue doing this? Do we need, anyone interested in helping move this forward, or what's the best use of our time, really? And I think that's what Ray wanted me to do with this talk, perhaps. So that's all the slides that I have. Hopefully that will help us get back on time a little bit. But if there's time for discussion now, we can do it now, or we do it later.
Sure, open up now. You're a little ahead of time, so.
Okay.
Take questions.
So just some, I'm happy. I want this to be more of a discussion than me just trying to answer things.
Okay.
So is the question, Henry, what sort of kiosk that Sunblazer trailer might become? A kiosk of goods and services, borrowing from Pollock, who says, if it's already been invented, don't waste time inventing it. Take it and improve upon it, and then make it radically affordable at the community level. So, you threw out there, a half dozen possibilities of goods and services that might be delivered. Then your first slide reminded us that, when electricity was more broadly sold in the U.S., it was always sold alongside goods and services. The electricity was underwritten by taxpayers and made affordable so that for-profit entrepreneurs could toggle onto it all these other goods and services. So you see the Sun trailer is the same thing. It's the entry point. Sunblazer is the entry point for maybe 20, 30 products and services that communities need.
Well, it's something to consider. I think that what the Sunblazer has, this is a pretty integrated solution. It lets people charge cell phones. And
your point at the beginning is the most critical point. Nobody here is actually in the electricity business. You all think you are. You're like, yeah, we generate power, we transmit power, we send electricity everywhere. Nobody cares. What are you going to do with an electron? You're going to zap yourself? I just zapped myself with a little bit of static electricity. It's not the most pleasant experience. I want light. I want TV. I want a radio. I want internet service. I want a computer. That's what I care about. And when you package these things, the Sunblazer concept was we don't actually provide electricity service. We have a subscription service. You get a home kit that has light. You get light and cell phone charging. It's a service. It happens to be powered by electricity, it's solar powered, which makes it great, but it's that package deal. Part of what we're also doing is integrating the Sunblazer stations with basically the iStore. It's like we're setting up the operators to sell components. You've got your little battery kit. These things are awesome. The new ones, these ones had the 2 DC 12-volt plugs, which was awesome. The new ones actually also have a USB outlet. And we're like, but everybody was like, okay, great, I can plug in my light. But then they're all like, fantastic, I have light. When are you going to sell me the other products? And we're like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm charging my cell phone. It's like, well, dude, go to Port-au-Prince and buy the car charger. You're like, really? Yeah, it just plugs in. And once they started to realize, oh, it's 12-volt DC, it's the same thing that plugs into my car. Now all of a sudden you're like, oh, now I'm running a radio. Now one woman runs a small TV. But it's that integration. You're not selling electricity. You are changing people's lives with the products that they'd like to have.
Yeah, exactly.
Let me add to that. I would say that in answer to the question you're asking, where does CSI go from here? I'm sure that CSI has within its capacity to answer that question. And it is to go to the people that CSI hopes to serve. I think that yeah, it's like, okay, we've got these things that we've invented, and we're trying to figure out how do we use them. Those poor people in the villages, those, whether they're in the townships around here, like where she was saying, that they're living next door to the power station, but they don't have power. Can we figure out a way of talking to those people and letting them drive while we do?
And the answer is yes. I mean, and there's a lot of improvements that can be made here with the CSI. The IEEE is amazing. You got like the world's largest professional association. You know, I talked about brain power. Ray and Albie are like two of the smartest people I've ever met in my life. Some of the people, Wayne, who worked on this thing, just the brain power, and Henry, all these people, brilliant people. What can you do? What more can you do? We've got a 12-volt DC car charger. Let's swap that for 24-volt DC, get a little bit more energy efficient. Let's go to the companies. You all work for schools or you work for corporations who want to make products to sell to make money. Bottom of the pyramid is a huge market, massive. So can we radically make these things affordable, make them even more energy efficient, so your 100 watts that you've got to work with there goes even further?
Paul, I've got a challenge here, and that is this something that the people are asking for?
They're not asking for electricity. Nobody cares about electricity. They all care about computers. They all care about lights. They care about TVs, radios, refrigeration. Refrigeration is massive. And you know, you go to Africa, not here in South Africa in the wintertime, but come back in the summertime and try to find some ice in South Sudan.
So we're of a like mind here, and that is they're not asking for 12 or 24 or 110 or 240 or 208 or whatever it might be. They're asking for
my cell phone to work.
The service, the cell phone or the refrigeration unit or things like that. And this is the key, the catalyst or the component that's necessary to get that. So I think I go back to then taking it one point further, and that is, so they're asking for refrigeration. They're asking for recharging their cell phones, those things. That's what's going to drive what we're supplying, because if they're asking for refrigeration, they're asking for higher current and probably higher voltage. And if they're asking for satellite receivers and television, that's more capacity. So is that what they're asking for? They're asking for lights in their home, what's the driving, the community driving force here, the village driving force?
Henry's point on one of his earlier slides is the critical one. It's that step. Today, I'm like, I've got a house with no ability to charge my cell phone, and I'm like a kerosene lamp that I'm choking on the fumes. when I got electric light, woohoo! 3 months later, I'm going, dude, where's my TV? Where's my radio?
That's actually an anecdote, the where's my TV thing. We just got back from Zambia and saw a wind turbine, and we were leaving, and we were just sort of doing the final debrief, and the mother said, I thought you were going to bring us a TV, and she was really upset. And yeah,
Let's go back to the slide 8, right? That's one with the steps.
Sure. I don't.
Yeah, you know, I guess Henry's question really is about affordability, right? I mean, we have a solution today, you know, in a way, I call it utility in a box, right? You can deliver it.
Yeah.
And so you're asking the question, well, should we invest in other technology unless we can demonstrate that we can lower the cost significantly? Or else I say, why, you know, look for another solution that's just comparable to what we have? And I think the other question is, you know, the delivery channel for, let's say, if someone wants, you know, air conditioning, delivering it through the electricity way may not be the way, right? If we want to look at affordability, then you can say, well, what is that? You know, is it a solar, you know, solar refrigerator? Is this the solution? So we need to find what that is, right? So I think we make sure we need to frame the right problem to solve. Versus, I think Paul's right? It's not just electricity that we're trying to market.
Did you have fun? Well, my first comment is we better move along pretty quick, but or we're gonna miss lunch. We did look into this whole refrigeration cooling business. There's a lot of products on the market that are 12-volt DC made for mobile homes and that sort of thing. So they're all 12 volts. The 24-volt is being pushed by an industry group, including Nextech, who are the people that designed and built this thing. And they specialize in office and lighting systems and other device powered off 24-volt. It's a new standard. There's a standards group, and they are leaders in this standards group that's setting up the 24-volt systems. For example, they've got the ceiling tile systems that you can buy now from Armstrong have built-in rails that you can just snap a lighting fixture on anywhere in the whole room. It's extremely flexible, lovely concept, and there's a nice range of products, mostly based on CFL type of lighting. That's a growing industry, but the point is you can do a lot with 12 volts also. And I did I did some basic research on what you could do just buying coolers and refrigerators. Now, the problem with buying coolers and refrigerators, coolers not so bad, but if you have actual refrigeration, now you have this critical situation where your power source better not fail. You know, just like when the power goes out in your home for 3 days, you lose your freezer full of goodies. So if you're a provider and power fails and you get a lot of lost product, your customers are going to be really mad at you, and it's really not going to work very well. But cooling is not so critical. Anyway, products are there. They're fairly cost effective. They're affordable. Sunblazer can run half a dozen of those, 8 cubic foot kinds of coolers. And it's all based on temperature calculations and how much cooling you need. Anyway, we'll have lots of time later to talk about this whole issue, but
well,
go ahead.
I was just going to make a comment about, I like step diagrams that kind of pictorially depict a scaling or a growth pattern. And I'm looking at this for South Sudan as well, but as opposed to the standard thing of trying to sell or concurrently sell products that create more demand or load, I'm trying to. The problem that we have in South Sudan, one of them is that 95% of the population is unemployed, therefore there's no source of income. And so one of the things that I was looking at this model for is how could we do a progressive process of increasing the demand for electricity, but through means that create jobs, and one of them might be, that I was sort of tossing around might be, and we'll talk about this, Thursday, is, agriculture is a big way of life, and yet most crops are grown only during the rainy season, 6 months of the year. When it's dry, nothing grows, and so by electrifying irrigation, for instance, and increasing the growing season would allow people to grow more crops, sell surplus, earn a living. Then they would have money that, some of which could be spent on, electricity in their homes. But this is kind of what I'm looking at. Is not so much. I'm trying to look for opportunities to create demand that also create jobs and livelihood for people. And the livelihood is not just in selling electricity because the market isn't there, but if we could create jobs in other ways that use the electricity, then you would still be contributing to betterment of the country and improved livelihoods and lifestyles and so on via electricity.
And I think that's how Robin first introduced me to this, was the fact that by having lights, a woman could do a craft at night and then sell it, and that gave her money then to do other things. Or a young child could read at night, and so that the light was enabling an opportunity that then created, like you said, jobs or learning opportunities that helped advance. I'm not sure watching TV at this point would help that, but so I think that's what we have to talk about, is what are our goals related to help people. I mean, we talked a little about this, we come at it at a very different, or I'll just say I come at it at a very different understanding, and I think we have to work on the social side of things, because the expectation of a TV versus having lights and having some other opportunities, we don't want to have unfair expectations that then mean that, well, I don't want electricity, I didn't get what I wanted, or that we didn't have a backlash because it's not what was perceived that we were providing.
For example, the light stick that you have there in your hand. How about spending some time with grandma in the village and figuring out the different ways in which that light stick improves their life? And when you do that, then that information will give you significant input as to whether you should invest in that light stick or not.
And I believe that we are getting field feedback from it, though. So.
That's actually, everything you just said is Michelle's talk.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We field tested the light stick.
Okay.
I mean, that's why we had you do it, right? To get the feedback.
Actually, Henry, I took one of the last year from the conference actually. And I brought it to the village, and they say they would actually buy it, if you brought it down there, because it's so useful. They don't have any lighting system, so something like that.
Yeah.
They really like
Question
it.
back to you. You said these are largely unemployed people and they don't have any money. So do they have light at all? Do they have anything? They don't have candles, kerosene, or anything?
On a limited basis.
I'll challenge you on the concept. I went through this with Haiti, and I sat with people. And we can go back to this and talk about it later. But people have money. It's a question of where are they spending the money that they have. If they don't have money, if they have literally zero money, they're either living in a refugee camp or they're dead or dying. And they know, and actually South Sudan in particular is a bad example because people are in that zone. But there is, people who are alive, they are finding ways to earn a living. And Haiti has 90% unemployment as well. And
the currency in most remote parts of South Sudan are cattle and goats, and so a family right now probably isn't likely to sell a cow to pay for electricity or a goat or something like that, because that's really how they subsist. Is that's how growing crops and cattle and goats and so on is how they you know, provide food for the family. They really don't have any cash. The only time they get cash is when they sell a goat to get some cash, maybe to pay for some kind of an emergency. But, you know, on an ongoing basis, I don't really, you know, but that's why I'm interested in hearing, you know, what your experience was. And
This is what we did, and in particular Michelle, like that exact kind of stuff is what we do.